Hello and welcome to FinextraTV's predictions for 2021. I'm Hannah Wallace, and kindly calling in today to talk us through the predictions in the sustainable finance space is, of course, Richard Pearce from ResponsibleRisk. So welcome back, Richard, and Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Fantastic 2021. I'm sure this last bit we've had in the first couple of weeks of January is just the sort of buffering over from 2020, but it's going to be a good one.
Yes, I'm very aware you were very busy at the end of last year, wrapping things up with our sustainablefinance.live event, and it seems you've started 2021 much in the same way, having spoken to a number of our sustainable finance community members to find out what's in store for the year ahead. And that's really sort of the purpose of this interview. I want to talk and summarise and absorb what you've learned from those discussions so far, and talk about your predictions for 2021, both in the short term and long term. So I want to start by talking about consumer demand. I know that's something you wanted to touch on. Do you think we're likely to see an increase in more conscious financing? And what about the proliferation of retail investors? Do you think this trend is likely to translate into a focus on green financing? By no means a small question to start off with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll give you a short answer to a long question kind of thing. But, I think on one level, obviously the consciousness of public has been very much addressed by things like the Make My Money Matter campaign, which obviously was addressing using your pension funds, and was the subject to quite a big sort of PR and marketing and advertising campaign. And I think that if you look at just some sort of indicators, we obviously did an interview here with Climate, and they were obviously crowd sourcing, and they were heavily oversubscribed. And I see a lot of those crowdsourcing campaigns, being really heavily oversubscribed, hundreds of percent oversubscribed. And if you then look at just, one measure, which is the fund flow index from people like Calastone, they had 1.1 billion of ESG funds in a single month towards the end of the year, which was equivalent to the entire flow from 2015 to 2018. So, there's definitely an increase in awareness and in activity. But I do think that, we have to be cautious, because obviously a lot of people are very worried about their finances, and they're worried about sort of very much the here and the now. And so, as somebody once said, don't talk to me about climate change when my house is on fire. I think we have to be conscious of, that immediacy of family finances.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's interesting. So what's the reaction from the top down then? What's happening now from the banks, governments and regulators? How are they reacting to this?
Well, obviously the sort of, the policy side has been running for some time, and obviously we're heading in this year in the UK into COP26, so it's really hotting up in the UK, but obviously that is a global context. I mean, I think everybody's really talking about Biden coming into power in the US, and I read an interesting stat that in the second coronavirus stimulus in the US, they had 35 billion in clean energy spending was earmarked, and Biden's talking about, I think, 60 times current spending during his administration. So everybody is seeing that, if you like, the global policy. We all know about what the Europeans have been doing, the recent announcements from China, and people always say in most Western democracies, policy and politics is all in the short term. So kind of scarily, I think that shows how climate change is now a short-term problem, because it is very much a political imperative now.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I know you wanted to talk to me a bit more about standardization as a result, and sort of carry on from this then. So talk me through that and what your predictions are for that space, and maybe shed some light on some examples of this acceleration towards standardization.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you translate it down from where we've gone on the sort of, the two pressures from the sort of consumer and the policy and the regulator, then the next one is the financial actors, who we've been talking about for a long time, saying, OK, so now you're going to be asking me to clean up my book of assets and to build new products, etc. But I've got to get a grip on the data that helps me report that, and the reporting that you've been asking me for is splintered and fragmented. So The big announcements I think around people like the blizzard of acronyms, here it comes, but the International Accounting Standards Board, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, Carbon Disclosure, and GRI, which is more to do with the environment. These are all working together to come together. That's one big block. It's not everybody, but all of this under the integrated financial reporting. So there's a big consultation going on and action going on. I think that's you could see that across the piece. The dichotomy, or the dilemma rather, is slightly that financial markets thrive on asymmetric data. They actually want to see where the alpha and the beta is from finding information which is not available to all. Some groups really want the standards so they can benchmark. Others would like this asymmetry, and I think we think in terms of the data, etc., that both needs can be served by the ability to ingest multiple data sources, normalize it, and then report out to the different standards requirements.
Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of needs to take into account, because taking all of this into account, there's bound to be some sort of backlash from those who might not be keeping up with the standard, and have a mixed bunch of reactions with all of this. So what do you think will be some of the short-term challenges we can expect to see this year?
Yeah, you can see the lobbying going on, which is, we often used to say anything before the but is bull XXX. And there's a lot of people saying, yeah, we think this is a great idea, but, and so you listen to what they say after the but. There are genuine concerns. I mean, this is not a perfect world by any stretch, but a lot of people are focusing on the why it's not good right now, what's wrong with it, why nothing can be done. And I think a lot of that is to do with protecting existing positions. It takes a long time to unwind some of these carbon-based investments and practices, to learn new ways of operating, to digitally transform your business. But I think there is also a coalition of the willing who are going, right, we know this is not perfect, but we're going to get out there and we're going to try and solve it. And I think that's what a lot of the community from sustainablefinance.live are like. It's a coalition of the willing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think with the nature of these predictions, especially with a topic like this, it might feel quite daunting looking at the year ahead and all the challenges that there are. But sort of jumping ahead a bit, what do you predict will be the medium-term impact of these developments? And do you think we're likely to see things maybe get worse before they improve? Maybe a bit of a negative outlook.
No, I don't. I mean, I do think there will be an increase in the sort of gaslighting sort of rhetoric of this data shows that what you're trying to tell me is that there is no climate change and there is no benefit to investing in this stuff. I mean, that's going to go up because that's just the nature of the world, sadly. But I mean, broadly, I think that we're in a much better position. I'm much more hopeful. I think that people are aware of these global issues that come from coronavirus and the impact on lives, economies, investments, and so forth. And so therefore there is a need to understand that risk. At the same time, the political climate's changed, as we spoke about, and also we've had quite a bit of time now in terms of bringing together these new standards bodies. And if you look at these stimulus packages, there's going to be absolute trillions of money flowing into the global economy. And if that can be, properly harnessed towards, green new jobs, along with many other things, then I think we'll really see a positive turnaround. So I think the climate piece, which is, we can measure through parts per million, I think we're going to really get to grip with that as best as we can, still a considerable problem. And I think we'll be moving on to, other major loss problems like biodiversity loss, which if we lose these habitats, as we spoke about, on the One Planet video, and also the biodiversity loss, we lose the ability to feed ourselves. So there's going to be a huge focus on that, I think, in this 2021 cycle.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to end on sort of positive development progress and talk a bit more about the technology solutions we're seeing across the industry, and talk a bit about who's made progress so far, but also what technologies we can hope to see emerge and evolve in the year ahead. So let's then, can you talk a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, well, I think if you take what I was just sort of saying, which is, on one side of the coin, there's all of this corporate disclosure standards reporting piece. On the other side, there's a need to understand natural capital and natural capital accounting and its impacts on biodiversity and climate and social existence and so forth. Then really, I think everything we spoke about in that last sustainablefinance.live starts to really come to the fore, particularly when you can start to utilize satellites, which are now much more affordable, working across many spectrums. They can cross boundaries, corporate ownership structures. And the challenge will be to net that down into understanding where assets and supply chains are operating, who owns them, feed that through Earth systems analysis, so we can, do a nuanced analysis into the risk systems of the financial industry, so that they can, adjust their credit risk and make capital flow more accordingly. And I think this digital twin, which is spoken about in the tech world, or a planetary computer where we can instrument and safely and securely transmit data to make these decisions, is going to become something people start to understand as they get more illustrations of its benefit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've certainly got a fair way to go still for understanding it, and I'm really excited to talk to you further down the line around this technology, and it's good to hear that, because there are some quite daunting challenges to overcome as well, and I'm sure we'll be addressing those in the next workshop we've got coming up. So until then, Richard, speak later on, and thank you very much for sharing your predictions today.
Pleasure as always. Thanks, Hannah.